Welcome to yapmeals, the show where I cook and talk about things. On today's menu, we have jalapeno popper biscuits and gravy, and today's subject, empathy is not embarrassing. For today's recipe for both the biscuits and the gravy, you are going to need flour, baking powder, baking soda, butter, buttermilk, jalapeños, cheddar cheese, breakfast sausage, whole milk, cream cheese, and of course salt and black pepper to taste. To start off today's episode, I would like to get into the lychee shot. I really want to dedicate this section of the episode to cheers to something. There's always something to celebrate, and so if there is something that you are celebrating yourself, please leave that in the comments. For me, man, it's been a lot of life changes. I recently got a kitten. That has been amazing. We love the little girl. I'm about to graduate in 2 days from college, from undergraduate studies, and I will be getting into graduate school in the fall. So cheers, shalom, salud, whatever it is that you call. Feel free to take a hit, a shot, a swig, whatever it is that you do with me, and cheers. Today's topic, empathy is not embarrassing. The reason that I wanted to talk about this today was a rapper by the name of Rashad. He recently dropped an album that is quite good, I must say. But he was on an interview with The Breakfast Club, and he said, quote, they don't make a manual for a bisexual black man. And this was in reference to when he had his sex tape leaked. A video of him engaging in sexual conduct was shared without his consent. And he received a lot of backlash from it. And the first thing that I thought about was, man, that's gotta be terrible. I couldn't imagine, one, having people see me in such an intimate way without my permission, without my consent, which, by the way, I'm currently just chopping the butter as small as I can, I guess, and throwing it into my bowl of flour. Which also, I have my salt, baking powder, baking soda in this, that's splashing all over, in this little ramekin. I'm going to go and toss that in with my flour. Just going to cut up this butter and continue on. But yeah, that was my first thought was, gosh, I can't imagine how much that must have sucked, right? And yet people on the internet were so ready to rush to make fun of him, right? To say homophobic things, to say that he's soft, to, it doesn't exactly fit the stereotype of a rapper to be queer. I think that's something that is beginning to be pushed back. I think that we have enough queer and trans acts in hip-hop that it's, while there still certainly is stigma against being queer in the hip-hop space, I think that it's something that is slowly beginning to be more accepted and, quote, part of the norm. People treated his sexuality like it was a spectacle, right? Like it's like he's not a human being, and whether he's a celebrity or not, like he is a person, right? And so where do we lose our humanity? Like, why, just because he makes music and just because a certain number of people know who he is, why does that give people a free pass to treat him like he's some animal, right? Some thing to watch and ridicule and comment on? Even the people who were trying to be supportive weren't really being supportive. I saw a comment, someone said something along the lines of like, I like his music, but I don't care what he does outside of that, right? And you're not being supportive of his sexuality and of his lifestyle, right? Because you're saying in spite of, right? You're saying I like your music even though, right? Even though you are bisexual, I still like your music. And it's like, well, that's really backhanded, and I don't think that you even realize that you're not being supportive in the way that you think you are, right? Just because you happen to like his music. it was just really upsetting to me, because for me, I really enjoy his music, and I can just enjoy the music and not treat his sexuality like it's some sort of moral hurdle that I have to jump through in order to get to that music, right? I don't have to say, well, nah, he's bisexual, but, you know, if I can get past that, I can like the music. Like, no, it's not something that you need to get past. It just exists. It just is, right? It's just something that is part of how he expresses himself, how he lives his life, and that doesn't have anything to do with you or the way that you interpret his art. It doesn't have to be. So then, when I saw people, even years later, because I believe this leak happened in like 2022 or so, even years later, when he does this interview, people are so ready to jump and ridicule. And it just made me think, you know, why is it that this type of culture is rewarded? In fact, the main question that I had for this video that I wanted to try to answer for myself and hopefully for you guys as well was, how do we protect tenderness in a culture that rewards cruelty? And what do I mean by that? Tenderness. There is a certain level of vulnerability, of understanding that you're able to experience your emotions in a full range, right? You can be happy, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can be embarrassed, you can be anxious, you can be all of these things. That is tender, right? Being tender is not only experiencing that full range of emotions for yourself, but also allowing other people to experience those emotions in the same space as you. Right now, I have my butter in my flour, and what I'm going to do is actually grab a fork, I think. When I'm mixing my biscuit dough, I do my best to not mix it with my hands, because a fork is much colder than my hands that are living, breathing, have blood beating through them, right? If I can crush this butter with a fork, it's much less likely to melt on me. So as I'm folding this in, let's get into my next point. Prioritizing circus and bread. There was the quote from the ancient Roman poet Juvenal, I believe is how you say his name, their name. I really don't know much about this individual other than their famous quote, and that is, "Give them bread and circuses, and they will never revolt," right? And back then it was talking about Roman society, right? If you give them circus, if you give them entertainment, right, and you give them bread, you give them sustenance, or you give them indulgence, they won't ever look inwards to themselves to see the issue with that type of consumption, that kind of blind consumption, and they also won't look outwards to the society that is rewarding that type of consumption without any further thought. Sometimes it's not a gladiator arena and it's not ancient Rome, but it can be, circus can be something as simple as a comment section online. The phrase, "it's not that deep," is a deflection. You don't want to be responsible for thinking deeply. And when someone else is thinking that deeply, it makes you question yourself. It makes you think, should I be thinking that way? Should I be questioning things further? Should I do more than just see these people being ugly, being so cruel in this comment section? Should I do more than just be complacent with that? And oftentimes people don't want to be responsible with that line of thinking, and so what do they say? They bat away the person who is doing that type of thinking, and they say, "It's not that deep," right? "You're doing too much because I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that much." Why do we treat caring about another individual, caring about things on a societal level as immature, but we treat callousness as wisdom? Why does it seem to be the default to be so callous, to be cold, to not be tender, right? To shut yourself off emotionally from the situation? Why is that the default over thinking, feeling, experiencing? It all sounds corny when I say it out loud, but truly, it just feels silly to me that when I see another man who is being ridiculed for his sexuality, when I say, hey man, like, we shouldn't dog on him for doing these things, for living his life, and other people are like, you're ruining my fun, right? It's not that deep. You're ruining my fun when you say that. Why am I too soft for that? It's definitely a societal issue. It's not just online. It is that deep when someone wishes they could change things about themselves just because other people wanted to kiki about them. You know, whenever someone is scared to come out, whenever someone wishes they could change their sexuality, they wish they could change their race, their physical features, their disabilities, their illnesses, etc., because everyone else wants to make a laughing stock of it. What does it say about us as people when publicly humiliating someone becomes a bonding activity? That question really stuck with me whenever I had first written it down. What does it say about us when it's so fun for us to hop online and join together to ridicule another person, right? Lolcows, that whole horrible side of the internet where some person enjoys the attention, enjoys the fact that they are able to cultivate a community, even if that community is full of people who wish the worst for them. Full of people who are happy to join together to make fun of this person, to suggest awful things to this person. It's a really sad thing. It's something that happens. There was Dr. Bingbing Zhang, who did a study on anti-Asian memes, said that disparaging memes increase acceptance of prejudice and intent to share that type of content, right? When you see that type of content and you see other people liking it, commenting, interacting with it, you are more likely to say, well, maybe it's okay. Maybe it isn't that deep. Maybe I should just not think about it, laugh it off, and you know what? Yeah, it was kind of funny. Let's send it to a friend, right? When we accept these things as okay, we are telling not just ourselves, but we are telling everyone else that it's okay. We're telling everyone else that it's acceptable, that this can be the norm, that it can be normal. Another study by Ford argued that disparagement humor can create a social setting where prejudice feels more acceptable and less punishable, right? When we are in those settings, which by the way, I'm folding in my cheese right now. I've got my butter in there, got my cheese. And these jalapeños, I'm going to saute a little bit of it with our sausage for the gravy. So I'm just going to put in about, I don't know, that's even too much, like 2/3 of the 3 jalapeños that I chopped up. Remind me to not rub my eyes. I did that earlier and had to wait a little bit after flushing my eyes out before I could film. Okay, so we've got our dough here. It should get to a point where you can kind of clump it together and it won't stick all the way, but you'll have bits, right? These little bits where that cheddar, where that butter is all sticking in together. Let's see if I can show cam 1, where all of that is able to stick together, right, but not hold entirely. That's the stage that we're at. So I'm gonna go in with my buttermilk, and like so. And I'm going to start this off with the fork, and as it starts to come together to a full dough, I'll then go in with my hands, start kneading. And when you're making a biscuit dough, you want to try to work it the least amount possible, which, by the way, we should definitely be preheating our oven. That is rather naughty of me to not be doing so already. Oven set to 400. We are mixing the dough. Here is our dough. This is what we're looking like. Pretty decent stopping point, I'd say. I'll get cleaned up. I'll get this dough fully incorporated, and then we'll come back to gravy and cutting the biscuits. And now it's gravy time. Squeeze that sausage on out. Where were you at the 2026 sausage stand?
Good job!
Are they sparkling?
I think so.
Oh god.
Happy birthday, dear Brinley. One go.
Yay! Yay! Oh, what should I wish? Oh shit!
Still coming back.
Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting a cake.
Squeeze that sausage on out. Where were you at the 2026 sausage stand? When people try to deflect, right, and they say it's not that deep, something that I thought of, and maybe there's a phenomenon similar to this out there, but this is just how I visualized it myself. I call it the uncomfortable empathy curve, and there are 3 stages of shallowness, of stress, and of comfort. So to begin with, there's shallowness, right? Where you have not done much work to be empathetic, right? To put yourself in other people's shoes, to really understand that there are lived experiences other than your own. That's where people deflect. That's where you get the, it's just jokes, it's not that deep. Which, side note, it's not up to you to decide how emotional someone else should be. Right? When you say it's not that deep, you're suggesting that someone else is wrong for feeling a certain emotion or for feeling things, right? And it's almost never the case. With shallow interaction, most people don't actually feel as strongly as they suggest, right? A lot of times they'll put themselves up on a front so that they can fit into whatever the norm is, so that they can kind of mimic what it is that other people are saying. And with that, with what we know about echo chambers, right, ideas get more morbid, they get stronger. People start to espouse values that they don't actually agree with, or say things that they don't actually mean. Someone who makes a joke in a comment section about bisexual men, right? Whenever Isaiah Rashad is talking about his experience of when his sex tape was leaked, right? When someone's like, oh, like, man, I don't even know exactly what the mind frame is, what these types of people would say. I can't remember it too well. But, right, these people who are making these types of jokes, I can almost guarantee you they don't think about bisexual men on the daily or even weekly, right? So how can you really care so much about a thing if it's not even present in your mind? The joke is not to push their values, right? The joke or the hateful comment, whatever, it's not actually what they believe. It's not actually what they truly care about on a day-to-day basis, or something that is integral to their identity. It is something that tells them that they're included and wanted, right? They want to get the likes. They want to get people who reply to them. They want to be included in the discourse. And for people who are rage baiters, maybe they don't want to be included in the way that people agree with them, but they want to be included, period, right? They want any kind of attention. They want any kind of interaction. Cruelty becomes a sort of social currency at this stage, whenever making someone else smaller buys approval, laughter, status, or even protection. What I mean by this is if you sell someone else out, if you sell out their identity, if you sell out some piece of them, right? You ridicule, you hate, you whatever, you get to gain favor and status, and you get to put yourself in this spot where you feel safe, or you feel wanted, or you feel included. The next stage in the curve is stress, right? Introspection is hard. It's a really hard thing when you do it right. You have to look inside of yourself and ask yourself really hard questions, right? Whenever it comes to people who are homophobic and they leave comments like this, they have to ask, when they go to be introspective, they have to ask themselves, why does this make me uncomfortable, right? Whatever another man does behind closed doors with a man, with whoever, right? Why does that make me uncomfortable? Why do I think that someone's sexuality is something that concerns me? Why is it my business? Right? That's something that you have to answer for yourself. Why did I stay quiet or agree with or add on to hatred whenever I knew that a certain comment was cruel? When I knew that something that someone else was doing in reference to another human being was cruel? Why did I let that happen or even add to it? Why do I feel the need to be a moral authority over people, right? Why do I feel like my morals are right and other people have to understand that? Other people need to understand what is right. Why do I feel the need to be this authority over them and tell them what to think and tell them that they should believe the way that I believe and anything else is wrong, right? Why am I not inviting real discourse and instead choosing to chastise first? Which, by the way, I'm starting to see a little bit of color on my sausage. I hope you can see here. Let's see, where's a brown bit? Not much, but whatever. Getting a little bit of color on the sausage. I'm gonna go in with the jalapeños. They have some water in them, so they're not gonna burn too quickly anyhow. So our hot sausage is gonna get even hotter. And again, as this cooks, you're gonna wanna chop this up, break these bits of sausage up, so that you're getting more surface. Well, first of all, I don't want giant chunks in my sausage gravy personally. Second of all, you're getting more surface area, right, when you break it up into little pieces. Instead of having a huge chunk, right, if you have these really small bits, these little globules, granules, whatever you call it, those little bits now have 4 sides to get crispy on, instead of this giant thing that only has these 4 sides, right? You have a bunch of little sides, more sides total. Math. But yes, introspection is hard. It's the part where people will either grow, or when they are faced with that stress and that difficulty and that discomfort, they retreat back to what's easy, right? And that's interacting with things at a shallow level. It's not questioning things. It's not looking outwards to assess whatever situation or societal phenomenon that you find yourself in. And it's not looking inwards to question yourself as to where you fit in that place, why you fit in that place. And lastly, in the curve, right, if our y-axis is stress, right, we start low with a shallow level of interaction. We bump up our stress by questioning that level of interaction, and eventually we achieve comfort, not comfort with ignorance, but instead comfort with context. Now knowing ourselves, now knowing the intricacies of the situations that we find ourselves in, we still then are able to be comfortable. We find a way to be comfortable with that information still present. You know, the saying, this guy must be fun at parties, right? Whenever you talk to someone who is thinking or interacting at a shallow level, they'll say something like that, right? Oh, this guy's real fun. I am. I like to think I'm pretty fun. I do go to parties. Actually, at my parties, people can be queer, they can be trans, they can be people of color, they can be disabled, they can be of immigrant status, they can be whatever, right? And we're still having a good time. Even with all of this information, even with understanding that we're different and that we all have different lived experiences, even if it's something that's foreign to me, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong. Even with all of that information, we're still having parties, we're still having a good time, right? That level of stress drops off when you're able to accept. In the case of Isaiah Rashad, I can listen to his music without treating his sexuality like it's some hoop that I have to jump through. I can just listen and go, yeah, he's bisexual. Cool songs too, right? And that's all it ever has to be. And so with this, there was another study that I saw. It was Kim and Sewell. They did a meta-analysis, so they reviewed other pieces of research, and it showed that pro-social behavior, including things like helping, volunteering, supporting other people, acts of kindness, they are associated with reduced depression, anxiety, loneliness, and an increase in life satisfaction. So what does that mean, right? When we live in a society that rewards cruelty, right? Whenever being cruel can get you attention, it can get laughs, it can get likes, it can get all of those things. It doesn't have to be that way, is what I'm saying, is what the research is saying, right? You don't have to be ugly in order to have less anxiety about things, in order to feel accepted, in order to have a healthy social life. You don't have to join in. You don't have to step into the crowd and also point and laugh. Right? I don't want to spend too much time on the gravy making section of the video because I think that it is the least interesting and least important part of both the video and the recipe. For the jalapeno popper, twist on the biscuits and gravy, I'm going to add cream cheese rather than any extra fat, butter, what have you, into the gravy. So right now we have a decent amount of color. I'm going to add in some flour, then a little bit of milk, just enough to break up some of that flour and get that roux to be a little bit less of a solid. We'll go in with our cream cheese, mix that together, salt, pepper, and then finish off with more milk to get it to the right consistency. And pretty simple gravy. I think more of the intrigue of today's recipe is from the jalapeno cheddar biscuits more than the gravy itself. But I do recognize that cream cheese is a little bit of an unorthodox addition to your average southern white gravy. Okay guys, and we're back. I have my biscuit dough here rolled out. Just gonna give a little, I wanna know how pizzolis, I think is how you call how they do it. They'll get one throw of flour perfectly onto a cutting board, and it's like the most beautiful thing ever, where they'll just whoosh, one little go, shabing. Yeah, I'm not one of those. Our gravy is bubbling, so I'm going to turn that down. I already turned this once, and what I mean by turn is something like a croissant dough, if you're familiar with the process. All you do, really, which if I want to be proper about this, I would get a rolling pin, give it a little flour rub down. I would roll this out to a nice little square, rectangle, what have you, and I would fold it over on itself. So quite literally, you're going to take the dough, fold it, and fold it. And then once you've done that, you roll, and you guessed it, fold and fold. Now I don't know if you can see, but even past the big spiral that we have going on, there's a bunch of little layers that I'm creating in between each of these folds. This is why keeping your dough cold is important, because when that butter doesn't melt, right, when you keep that butter cold and you don't give it a chance to melt into the dough, it sits in between layers of dough. It sits in between layers of moisture and flour. You get a bunch of beautiful little layers. I like to do biscuits my way. What is my way? It's not unique to me. When I say this, I'm not saying I'm the only person who does this. However, rule number 47 of cooking, get a bench scraper. What I mean is, a lot of people like to cut out their biscuit dough into circles. Me personally, I like a square biscuit. It's just a personal preference thing, I think. And these biscuits are going to be jumbo, much larger than your usual biscuit. But I'm just making dinner for my girlfriend and I. So 4 big biscuits is okay for me rather than 8 to 12 normal sized biscuits. And this is one of the caveats to using VHS cameras. While it looks very cool, it's not really good for definition. However, I hope that you can see some of these layers that are built into this biscuit dough. Just one last little shape up, kind of square them off a bit more. And my oven is already preheated to 400, so that's going to go in to a ripping hot oven. Here we are. Butter, just to make sure that these biscuits are not sticking. And I like to have a little bit of crisp to the edges of my biscuits. And doing this, really making sure that every little bit is covered with butter, means that any contact that these biscuits have with the tray, they're going to be frying in that butter. And the butter is going to caramelize and give you some really nutty notes. So it's nutty, it's fatty, it's crispy. The cheddar, the cheese will have almost a bitter note as it begins to caramelize, and you get those crispy cheese bits. Yeah, really load up your tray with fat. Try not to pack too tightly because you don't want to smother them. However, I do like to pack them tight enough that they're all touching, because then as they rise in the pan, they will push against each other and then rise up. So you'll have a really pretty tall biscuit. I'm going to say that that's going to work for me personally. I like the way that these biscuits look. So these are going to go into a ripping hot 400 degree oven for about, I'm sorry camera, they're going to go in the oven for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, I think. Look at the recipe, it's in the description. Nugget, biscuit, nugget, and a biscuit. Dude, what happened to Tobuscus? Isn't he like pro AI and like Zionist or something? I don't know. What happened to Tobuscus, man? Why does everyone who ever touches Minecraft and like gets a little bit of clout just lose their brain or get it on with a miner? What is it about Minecraft, man? I like some of the Minecraft games. What do they know about being sane? Alright, let's get back to the video, guys. You know, life's too short to not have a gravy cam. That's what my Uncle Jared always said. I don't have an Uncle Jared. Yet. If anyone would like to marry my brother has a girlfriend. I don't know. If anyone would like to become my honorary Uncle Jerry, let me know. Jared? What am I talking about? So the last point I wanted to make, before getting into the why try, right? Why battle the cruel culture, the cruelty rewarding culture that we live in? Why battle it? Before I get into that, I want one last point, and that is to kind of appeal to the people who are, I don't want to say content, I think complacent in the cruelty. I want to appeal to those people, and so I get it. It's a fear of the mob thing, right? The mob is huge, and when it comes to the internet, it's perceivably, I think is the word, it's perceivably infinite, right? There is always another person ready to come up and tell you that you're stupid or make fun of you or just be horrible if you don't jump in the mob as well. I think that there's a sense of learned helplessness that comes with this, and while I can sympathize with it, I also understand too that there's a difference between choosing your battles and using that helplessness as an excuse to never do anything, to never stand for anything or stand up for anyone else, or even to stand up for yourself. Dr. Leah Butler found in a study that people were more likely to intervene in online harassment when they felt that they had responsibility for addressing it, right? I think that most of us pawn this job off to someone else, right? It's not my job. job. Like, these people are psychopaths. You expect me to jump in the way? You expect me to be the one to tell them that they're wrong? No, sir, not me. I'm not going to do that. When everyone does that, no one does, right? Whenever it's someone else's responsibility every time, who is someone else? Where are we at right now?
We are at Rollin Museum at the May Market in Cartersville.
Right now I am with
Amber Baldwin, and this is Amber Baldwin Art.
Real quick, go ahead and point out your favorite piece.
I watch a lot of artist documentaries, and this one in particular it's Georgia O'Keeffe. So if you know anything about Georgia O'Keeffe, she focuses a lot on flower realism. I really hate painting flowers, like with a passion, but I need to get better at them because I love flowers. I've got a bunch of flower tattoos, and so I need to force myself to get better at the things I don't like painting.
What does creativity and creating mean to you?
I've had a very difficult relationship with this because I used to be really lazy with art and think that, oh, if an idea didn't come to my head, and then I'm not doing anything. But I think I've realized, especially with forcing myself to paint every day for 30 days, that you have to put in the effort. You physically have to go in, and it doesn't even matter if it's just a stupid stick figure on a canvas. At least there's something on there, and then you can build off of that. I've just realized that creating, it doesn't always have to be like, oh, like I'm staring at the wall and an idea comes to my head. Like sometimes you just have to sit there and force yourself to make something. My background is in psychology, and so I really get interested in painting like the shadow side is what I call it, the things that we have repressed, and work on exposing those through my paintings, working some of those, I guess, traumas or just anything that I have repressed.
Last thing, explain the fit.
Thrifted baggy jeans,
Good.
plain black tee, and a silk green tee to make people think that I'm professional.
We got the Converse, we got the brand new black skater jeans, and the t-shirt is Julie. Yeah, listen to Julie, man. So yeah, this has been great. This has been
Amber Baldwin Art.
and Chandler with yapmeals.
Hell yeah.
Now we get into the why try, right? Why even try to battle this thing? Why try to preserve our tenderness, our ability to be vulnerable when it's not rewarded, right? When we don't see it be rewarded either online or in real life context. Well, sometimes you're not speaking to the cruelest person in the room. Sometimes you're speaking to everyone else so that the cruelest person in the room is not mistaken for the room itself, right? And so what do I mean by that? Well, if there is someone who is incredibly loud and terrible, right? They're racist, they're homophobic, they're just mean-spirited, they're whatever, they're just bad. When that badness is the loudest thing in the room, that's what's available to people for building a prototype, for building what the example is, right? They automatically will assume that the room is bad because no one's doing anything. And so you likely are not going to convince that bad person to stop being bad. It just probably isn't going to happen. Most people don't hop online, don't hop into arguments. Most people who are chastising, making fun of, whatever, just being rude and cruel to other people, they're not looking to be convinced. And so you're not talking to them, even if you are directly addressing them, you're not talking to them, you're talking to everyone else and saying, hey, there is someone with some sense here. There is good in this situation, right? It's not all bad. There are people with sense. There are people who don't agree with this. So you're not just talking to that bad person, right? There's a whole audience of people. There's a closeted person who's reading the comments and sees that you're defending queer identities, and maybe they feel a little bit better about themselves, even if it's only a little bit. Moving that margin is worth it, right? The bisexual black man who's wondering, does everyone feel this way? Whenever they see Isaiah Rashad getting outed, and everyone's like, how dare you be bisexual and black, right? There may be another person who shares a similar identity to Isaiah, and when everyone in the comments is dogging it, well, now they're like, God, does everyone feel that way about me? Maybe I should hide my identity. the silent reader who maybe would never comment, would never be in the comment section, would never interact, but they read it, they see it, right? They see everything that's going on in these types of conversations, and they just needed one person to say, hey, this is cruel. Just all they needed was one person to say, hey, this isn't okay. When you speak up, sometimes you are that person who kind of restores faith in humanity for another person when they're doom scrolling, right? We call it doom scrolling for a reason, not joy swiping. I don't know. Sometimes the point is not conversion, right? You're not trying to convince people to change. You're not trying to tell them the right way and hope that they see the light, right? It's about interruption. It's about stopping them in their tracks for even a moment in time for other people to see that this huge machine of awfulness and cruelty and meanness can stop. It can reach a point where people are able to be louder than it, to move faster than it. Be the proof that good is there, that good can prevail, even if only for a moment. So the biscuits are mostly cooked, at least on the inside, to emulate the crispiness of a jalapeno popper. I'm just going to throw some more cheddar cheese on top of the biscuit and then throw that back in for another 5 to 10-ish minutes until it gets golden and crispy on the top. Okay guys, and our biscuits are done, nice and golden on the top. With that crispy cheese. I've got a little bit of a herby garlic butter here, just a little bit of crushed garlic, and some Thai basil from our little hydroponic garden there that I've thrown in. So we're just going to go over top of these biscuits with some of this garlic butter, some of that goodness. So it's nice and herby. The Thai basil over a sweeter Italian basil is going to be a bit more minty. I think it'll give this dish a little bit more depth. You're already getting a lot of creaminess and spiciness and stuff from the jalapeno popper side of things. So I think it doesn't hurt to add some other flavors in, even if only as a garnish. Just to kind of wrap up what we talked about today, cruelty becomes culture when it's rewarded, right? So what is that reward? Oftentimes on social media, it's things like a like, a supportive comment, a share, a laugh, what have you. That's why we see things like disparagement humor being so prevalent in the culture. It makes things like prejudice feel like it's socially acceptable because it's represented in so many ways, through memes, through GIFs in the comments, all sorts of things. Because of the prevalence of disparagement humor in our culture, especially in internet cultures and subcultures, that's why silence really matters, right? It can make cruelty look like it's unanimous, right? Like we talked before, whatever is most available in the room, whatever is the loudest voice in the room, people can mistake that for the room itself. And so being silent allows people to continue to make that assumption and feel right in making that assumption. When I say this, I don't mean that you have to speak up to every single time that you see cruelty, right? Preserving tenderness doesn't just mean that. It means that you choose where your care goes, right? You pick your battles. It means that you speak when your voice can interrupt the norm, right? If you don't feel confident in your ability to disrupt the norm of cruelty, then maybe it's not your time to speak up in that moment, and that's totally okay. It means stepping back, right? Whenever you aren't capable, whenever you feel that you're not capable or even responsible in that moment, when you feel that you need rest or that you're overwhelmed. It means building rooms and communities where people don't have to shrink themselves in order to belong. The idea that everybody eats, right? There's always room for everyone to prosper and to be happy and to coexist. Caring for yourself doesn't automatically erase fatigue, especially when the problem is chronic or if it's structural, right? So if you're a black person in America, if you're a queer person in America, if you're one of these protected classes, that doesn't, caring for yourself doesn't mean that the structures that put these stresses on you are going to come crashing down. But self-compassion, protecting yourself, rest, and remembering your mission to be good and to show others that good people exist, it can help your care from turning into resentment for yourself, for others, or for your environment that you live in. Cruelty does become culture when it's rewarded, but tenderness can also become culture when it's practiced. As the final closing note for the episode, I'd like to introduce a new segment called Good Thing, Bad Thing, where I name a good thing and a bad thing going on in the world. A good thing, Tusi, by the artist Judith. Oh my god, it's the coolest thing ever. It's like Mexican hyper pop meets indie, like, I don't know, she just has such a soft, like R&B-ish sounding voice, and the music video is amazing. Like, it's just so, it feels so embedded in the culture while also pushing it forward. It's really cool. I don't think there's anyone else who's, at least in terms of production, song structure, and just like vision, is doing what Judith is doing right now. So yeah, shout out Mexico, and they're wonderful artists who are representative of the culture. For the bad thing, the destruction, the annihilation of the Voting Rights Act, yikes, we're seeing gerrymandering across the United States be defended and upheld. So especially, me being a Georgian, for my neighbors in Tennessee, I really apologize for how they are gutting your representation. All of the black voters who are in Tennessee, especially in the Memphis area and in the inner city areas, the fact that your votes are practically being erased just by the redrawing of districts. It's a terrible thing, and I'm very sorry. That being said, you know what, maybe on good thing, bad thing, I should flip it and go bad thing, good thing, huh? On that somber note, I really appreciate you for watching thus far. I know that I took a bit of a hiatus. I've just really been trying to build out what I want for the show, different segments and things like that. But I think that I have a decent structure in place, so I'm not going anywhere. If there is any lulls in uploads, trust that I am working on something, and I do want to continue to have conversations with you guys. So once again, thank you, and I'll see you next time.